What's happening, everyone? Allie here with Run Pure Sports to shout out our hosts who had great calls last week and our members who are coming off a huge week where they shipped over $1.2 million in prizes. Congrats to our very own Bobby who landed a ticket to the DraftKings Live NFL Final in Miami.
He called it a touchdown! Woo!
Touchdown, Ayuk!
Let's go!
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Bobby made a huge call on 2% owned running back Rashad Penny, who ended up with a slate-breaking score of over 29 fantasy points on DraftKings. Penny also landed on Run Pure Sports member the Man 11's 100K winning lineup on FanDuel, continuing the trend of six-figure hits for RPS members. On our Sunday morning Wood Show, Hoop body bagged everyone with his Hunter Renfrow call. Congrats to him for sticking to his guns with his rich parents play of the day while everyone else made fun of him. Renfrow went on to have a monster 30-point day for the Hoopster.
This one with my boy Renfrow, I just cannot wait. Cannot wait. And this could be it because I'm feeling good about it, where he gets that 30 piece. I can just
So how many weeks does it count for, like 3 seasons?
How many guys in the NFL go for 30? Like, there's not many guys.
And he's not going to be one of them. I'll tell you that, Hoop. But you'll get.
You finally jumped in. Thank you.
Oh, he flipped on me.
Big T continued the good mojo Sunday night with his call to start Jakeem Grant in Sunday night's Showdown slate.
The guy that's going to win the slate, I'm always good when I pop in at the last second like this, is Jakeem Grant. Mark my words.
Grant went on to have 2 touchdowns, shipping Big T first in Yahoo's single game tournament. Run Pure Sports member Anger Tornado joined Big T on the Jakeem Grant play to bank a first-place finish in the DraftKings Showdown tournament, taking home over $13,000. Also, big congrats to Run Pure Sports member Swint, who took home $20K in MMA. Bad Lab joined our free MMA show the day of the event to lay out all of the best plays. Our guests have been killing it lately, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our free shows. If you are not already a Run Pure Sports member, now is the best time to join. We partnered with SaberSim to offer a huge package deal where you can get access to all of Run Pure Sports content, along with SaberSim's industry-leading optimizer and projection system. All you have to do is simply use promo code SABER15. This will knock 15% off our already low combo price for the life of the subscription and save you even more money. That comes out to be just under $130 a month for the RPS and SaberSim combo. Or you can add in our bet side and bump it to just $140 a month. That's an incredible value, which would normally cost $190 a month with separate subscriptions. But act now, because this deal expires on Thursday. So what are you waiting for? Join today and let's run pure.
Simon, thank you very much for getting us in here. It is the Wishbone. This is a podcast that is in its second year, and one of the founding members, Uncle T, is not with us. He is going to be calling a high school basketball game with the number 2 team in the state. It's expected to be sold out, so there will be no Uncle T, which is unfortunate. We kind of need Uncle T, but we do have G-Rizen, and we do have JT. How are we going to compensate for the loss of Uncle T this week, JT?
Well, I think the first thing to point out is this is a huge game as far as high school basketball goes in the state of Kentucky. I think Shamiqua Holdsclaw's daughter is playing in this game. You remember Shamiqua. She was a fantastic high school basketball player. So it's a big day, and I do miss Uncle T. I miss him already. And we'll get through it. And then next week, he can give us a recap of what happened in that game. And maybe even, I actually think this would be a great idea, maybe even play a little snippet of maybe his favorite call from the game.
I'd love it. G-Rizen, wonderful to see your smiling face today, or maybe you're grimacing. I don't know what it is. Congratulations. Are you ready to get sunburned in Miami?
Absolutely. I'm going to sit on the beach. And I'm going to drink these beers called Modelo's.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have some fun and hang out with my friends. And hopefully that somebody I know ships that $2.5 million that DK is handing out and to be the next fantasy football world champion. So I'm going to go along and have some fun and hang out and drink some beers.
That's not a bad thing at all. I absolutely love that, G-Rizen. Will you and Big T be hanging out doing anything else besides for playing the DraftKings and then drinking a little bit?
Oh, I'm absolutely sure. We've already discussed maybe us playing a little bit of cornhole against some poor saps on the beach that want to walk up and think that they're going to peel a couple bucks out of me and Big T's pocket, because that probably will not happen in my watch. But should be a lot of fun. It's always fun hanging out at them live finals when get everybody around. I mean, you see these GOAT commercials that Big T's in. I mean, he's surrounded by whistles and poor Osimo all the time. So he needs a little run pier help over there. So I'm going to have to help him out here against all these so-called nerds down there. So we'll have us some fun.
Okay. Now, what are you going to do for marijuana? That's the big question. Will you bring a vape pen or just completely stay off of it?
Well, no, I will be sure that what I need gets there in full capacity. There will be no issues with that at all. And I am not concerned of that. I have traveled all over the country, and JT probably shouldn't hear this because, I'm sure
plug your ears, JT.
Don't want to hear this. Plug your ears. But I put
la.
It works out that you can have it in certain places in maybe your suitcase that they never check, and
really?
You can take as much as you want. I've been all over before, and they never have said anything. I actually had a guy one time when he took it off when it was coming around the carousel said, "There must be a skunk nest inside that bag."
I mean, you don't even hide it.
Put it right in your travel bag and just go on about your business.
So you stink up Tony's garage, you stink up the airport. I mean, this is just amazing. And you just don't give a fuck. You'll just go out there, do what you need to do, and you'll be done. That's wonderful, G-Rizen. Congratulations. I hope you party down there and get a little sunburn and win some money.
But if you're not able to get it, in my past experiences, those who are youngsters and are rookies, you always go down to the towel room where they're doing the laundry. And all you got to do is ask one of those workers if they can get you what you need, and give it a half hour. They'll have you back down there. And usually at every hotel. Yeah. That's always the trick of the trade.
I usually go to the bar. Okay. Thank you, G-Rizen, for that wonderful explanation. As JT Hayes has turned from a white man to a fairly red man
He's
now.
Hearing all the tricks over here.
I'm not. I'm just now thinking about what I'm going to do when I get the call from G-Rizen that he's in custody and he needs some assistance. And, of course, like a true friend, I'll be there to help him. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that course of action, but yeah, it could work. So there you go.
So one time I traveled, I had my in-laws with me and I was younger years back and I had stuffed some in my bag. And all of a sudden I get a call sitting there with the family in the loudspeaker. Will the traveler, Scott G-Rizen, please come to the airport security? And I'm thinking, oh, shit. I'm thinking, oh, boy, do I even go to this place? Like, what am I going to do here? Like, I think if I was by myself, I think I may have just went home. I don't even know. But anyway, I get there and they said, we found something in your bag, sir, that you can't have on the plane. And I said, oh, well, what was that? And they hand me my flask and said it had whiskey in it and handed it back to me. And they told me I had to dump it out. I dumped it out and went back on the plane. And when I got back over to the family, my friend said, you look like you saw a ghost. I said, I think I did.
So you had weed in the bag, but they only asked you about the oh my God.
Right.
Oh my God. That's an absolutely amazing story. So we got some other things going on. We're going to talk about the Saturday game or games in the NFL. We'll definitely get to the main slate on Sunday as well for the Sunday games. A lot of COVID going down right now, but you know what? JT Hayes had a thought, G-Rizen. He goes, what I'm thinking about right now, I'm thinking about my bald brother, Dana White. Him, Larry David, Dana White. And you said he just keeps going after all these media members. Now, I did see him call Darren Ravel horrible names, mean things. Why has this piqued your interest, JT Hayes?
So first of all, I think that Dana White is a fascinating person. I think he's very, very good at what he does. Keep in mind, he's built that company from nothing. People scoffed at the idea that people would go and watch these things, and he made it into this huge business. I mean, he was the driving engine behind that. And what's fascinating about it is, first of all, you mentioned the players that are now, all these players testing positive for COVID, almost every single one of them vaccinated. And it's sort of, he was like the first one to say, look, we've got to live our lives. We've got to figure out a way to deal with this. And he didn't believe that the answer was to shut everything down. And I think at this point you have to say, can someone give us a straight answer about what the vaccine actually does? Because the government says that it prevents you from going to the hospital and dying, right? But then there's also, we know that there could be some side effects, and people have suffered from side effects. And so now there's one booster that's out there. Now Pfizer CEO says, hey, people may have to take a second booster before the end of the year. And I understand why people are going out and getting these. Look, I mean, this, for me, my father, who's 78 years old, he didn't leave the house for 9 months. Wow. And the first time I met him, we were going to something for my uncle last summer in California. I met him in the Atlanta airport, and he's standing in a corner wearing his mask because he was huddled up in his Brooklyn home watching all these politicians say everyone's going to die if you go outside. And so, number one, I think what's interesting about what Dana White did is he said, hey, we're going to find venues that we're going to be able to hold these events because we believe the science. We're not governed, we're not politicians telling you what to believe. They have doctors, they studied it, and they said, you know, these are the facts, is that if you have no underlying conditions, if you're under a certain age, then you might get it, you might get over it, you should get over it pretty quickly. I think it's a 99.7 or 8 survival rate. I mean, the guy went to Abu Dhabi, contracted out halfway around the world to have these events. But what's interesting now is this comment that he made, and he talked about Darren Ravel, and he talked about Ariel Helwani. He hates Ariel Helwani for whatever reason. And it was only about 5 years ago that Helwani breaks this story about a couple of fights that are coming up. Now, this is where I think one area where I disagree with what he's doing. That's good for the UFC. On a week or where they have a 3-week break where they don't have any events, yeah, the UFC didn't release the schedule, but Ariel Helwani is out there saying, hey, I'm hearing that they're working on whoever it was, Bisping or McGregor, whatever. And so now you have 2 weeks of UFC fans maybe going to the website, maybe, you know, making purchases, whatever, getting excited about the product, even though it's a downtime, right? Who's been the best at this? The NFL, the NBA. All year long, you hear stories about the NFL. All year long, you hear stories about the NBA. So we didn't like that. So now he's again on Ariel Helwani because Helwani is not happy about that. He was been denied access. Some people won't talk to him. And he, as you mentioned, he said some vicious names to these people. But the flip side of this is the era of the star reporter, right? The Wojciechowskis. I think nobody wants to be a star more than Jeff Passan at MLB Network.
He is a friend of mine. So watch your step.
No. I'm not saying
buddy.
I don't like him, but the era of the
Does he
star.
really, let me jump in here because I don't give a shit if you think he is or not. He probably is, to be honest with you. But what gives you the sense that he wants to be one in particular?
Jeff Passan?
Jeff Passan, yes.
That's the impression I get. That's the impression. So I went to the winter meetings a couple of years ago, and it was fascinating. But you could tell who's ambitious. You could tell that he was one of the guys. I mean, he was breaking news about MLB during COVID on the ESPN broadcasts of the Korean Baseball Organization at 5:00 in the morning. Right. And I don't, there's nothing wrong with that ambition, but what you see here, and this is where I think Dana White has somewhat of a point, because a different set of reporters, this Shams Charania from NBA Reporter, he writes, you could correct me if you think I'm saying his name wrong. That's fine.
Shams Charania.
Okay. Thank you. So him.
You're welcome.
So So they break the story, but it's interesting because it's how, we see this in the same way that has happened with COVID, right? Media reports a story. Media needs clicks. Media feeds on divisiveness. And so Shams breaks this story. He says, hey, the Pacers are going to go through a massive rebuild. They're looking to deal everyone. They're listening to everyone. So Rick Carlisle, the GM, have to sit down with the players and say, we're not really ready to do that. But now you've got what? You've got players who are unhappy there because they want to be the centerpiece, because they know that being the centerpiece means they get the max deal. And they're probably not happy with Rick Carlisle's rotations, which are definitely a little bit different than your normal NBA head coach. And so next day, Miles Turner's out there saying, yep, they've never really featured me. I'm looking for the next opportunity. I'm fine with whatever they do. I really need to be more involved. And so I think there's something, and Dana's going after these people now, to be clear, because they're attacking him about fighter pay. And they probably don't have all the facts about fighter pay, but I think there is some truth to, if you're a new fighter, if you're a younger fighter, you're not making a lot of money, But I would ask, Holden, what industry do you go in as a 19, 20, 21-year-old, unproven, and make a lot of money?
Prostitution.
I mean, that would be a potential. You would know more about that. I mean, I think that
possibly drug dealing as well. But yes, as far as the legal things here in America, those would be the things. And I'm going to get up right now because I have to charge my computer. I forgot my cord on the other side. But G-Rizen, do you have any thoughts on the modern day superstar reporter making it about himself more than the job that he's doing?
You mean like Stephen A. Smith?
He's not
it's another good example.
He's not a reporter anymore. He's a piece of shit.
Yeah, but it just seemed like, who's the other the other guy on Fox? He's a Cowboy fan. I forgot his name. Skip Bayless. I mean, those kind of guys. It's like they make asinine comments about stuff, and it's just another, it's just another situation to where I think the news media, it has such a powerful platform, and these guys, they say stupid shit just to rile up crowd or to get a clicks or to get a reaction out of people. And it's we've turned into a society where you want to shock somebody more so than get them the actual truth of a story. So it's like you spin it into some way, to be controversial or whatever else it may be. But it's just we're in a messed up place, man. This social media, I mean, we as adults at our age, we grew up without all of that. Now all of a sudden here it is front and center. So we've kind of been through life without all of this. And we know it's just totally different times. But man, I feel sorry for, you're right, these up and coming reporters. There's so many people out now reporting, trying to get the story, trying to do this, trying to do that. And it's changed. It's changed immensely.
It's not journalism, it's media. But the other thing is, other countries see this, and it's sort of, like I've said it on here. So we're witnessing the end of the end of the American empire. As China buys up every piece of property that they can, every bond that the U.S. government will issue, and someday we'll turn around and say, "All right, we want it today." So
you owe me the money, right?
Yep.
We're gonna owe them a lot of money, a few $1 trillion. That'll be fun. That got a little heavy. This conversation's getting a little heavy. So I feel like it's time now to move on to the next lighthearted subject, if you would like. JT?
Does it involve titties?
Unfortunately, no. We did not. Do you have a story to share, G-Rizen? Because I'm always fine with that if you'd like to.
I mean, I'm still, Jared Goff's girlfriend bouncing around all excited about him getting that victory. I mean, that's a nice video. I mean, that's what the American dream's all about. You get up to be a quarterback, you go to LA, you meet you a pretty little, Sports Illustrated model, and life is good. You can even suck and look what you get. It's amazing.
Well, that's the thing. We can rip him limb to limb, and the Detroit and the national media can rip him limb to limb, and then he goes home and he bangs it out. So
yeah,
he's the
kudos
winner.
to him. Good.
We are not the winners in that situation. He is the winner.
Is right.
Yeah. And your Lions gave a valiant effort. here in Denver before just completely folding G-Rizen.
You know what does bother me about that game is I thought, okay, here's Melvin Gordon. In my back of my brain was saying, play them both, dummy. Play them both, dummy. And I thought, hell no, I'm not playing because one will score 2 touchdowns, the other one won't score any. And then what happens? They both go off for 20-some points. In my mind, it actually said the Lions suck. They're shorthanded. They're playing in a high altitude. Play both running backs. And lo and behold, that pretty much was the winner.
It would have been, and it's funny because on the Sunday Off the Chalk show, and then as I know Holden likes to hear about, I then did like a live Q&A before lock on the Mayo Media Network.
That's amazing. I can't believe I missed that.
And yeah, no, well, you were on the Up to Lock show.
Okay, so I always miss it. That's why.
Yeah, but one of the things I said everyone's going to play Williams because everyone saw how great he is. Thinking, oh my goodness, they have to feature this guy. And I'm like, but I guarantee you Vic Fangio and the Denver Broncos staff doesn't care. And so I played Gordon because I'm like, he's going to get a ton of carries. He's back and he's going to split the work. And by a hair, but at 1% ownership, he outscored Williams. So I wish I played them together too.
I did. You know what I've been doing just because I have to study the Broncos so much more than any other team. It's inevitable. I've been playing their showdown slates and I just loaded both up on both of them. And even in the showdown slate, less than 10% putting them both in the lineup. And that just didn't make sense to me because this backfield, I don't know if I said this last week, but Javonte, what he did is basically do exactly what those 2 guys do every single week. So if he was given the opportunity, but I get why the coaching staff is playing Melvin Gordon. You know, he's a veteran. He is going to keep Javonte from touching the ball 400 times this year. Javonte might touch the ball 300 times when it's all said and done. Think about that for a minute. That's a shit ton of touches, isn't it? Because all they do is run.
Gordon's been effective, though. That's the thing.
I know.
So why wouldn't you? I think as fans, as fantasy players, you're like, come on, just make it one guy. So make it easy for me. When in reality, he's got 2 guys that have been effective.
He does.
I think you're going to see that more and more too from NFL teams moving forward, where you're going to see them not drafting running backs in the top 2 or 3 rounds of the, top 3 rounds of these drafts anymore. They're just going to have 4 or 5 guys because, I mean, now that they added an extra game, it's just you see it literally how many times. I'm convinced now, if you see a running back that gets, he's 400 touches, high 300 touches, the next year, their chances of getting hurt to me seem to be way greater than, like if they were coming in off a slower type year. So I think that's big. We see it all the time. These guys that have all these touches the next year, the McCaffreys, the Jacob, the Barkleys, the Henrys, we see it over and over and over again. And these guys only last 1 or 2 years. And think of all the money you pay these dudes. Like, you can't afford to just get them out there and kick their ass. Are we going to start seeing running backs kind of be like Major League Baseball pitching, where you're only going to see, limited certain situations? You're going to have maybe 4 or 5 running backs on a team. You're going to see them get mixed in. I think that's going to be the case eventually.
You talked about it with Henry earlier in the season. You were talking about the number of touches that he was getting, and then of course he gets hurt. But I think you're already seeing that. You see it in New England, right? They've got Harris. They drafted Ramondre Stevenson. They used Brandon Bolden, and there's been games on it. I think it was a showdown for New England where if you played those 3 guys, nobody did, or I think a couple of people might have. You played those 3 guys, you were so far ahead of the field because that's all they used. You look at the situation in Arizona where they had Connor and Edmonds that they were using as a tandem, and then Edmonds gets hurt. Los Angeles has been doing it for several years, and Henderson and Michelle. Henderson gets hurt, then he goes on the COVID list, health and safety protocols. Now Sony Michel comes in. But what do you guys think about what's going on in Carolina and what Matt Rule is doing with Cam Newton and PJ Walker? Now, even Kyle Shanahan said, you know what? Now I'm wrong. I don't think this is the way to go after he started the season where it was going to be a mix there of Jimmy G and Trey Lance. And now it's just kind of odd what's going on in Carolina. Of course, their season's going nowhere. They don't have a chance to make the playoffs. There's a lot of other things going on. Just fired their OC. I don't think a 2-quarterback platoon is something that I want to see in the NFL. I don't think it's something that, you look at these teams that are really good. The Rams with Stafford, Arizona with Kyler, the Bills, Tom Brady. You don't have 2 mediocre quarterbacks splitting time.
What do you think about that, G-Rizen? The little back and forth of QB here.
I mean, with Matt Rule, I think it screams to me that, ownership wanted Cam Newton. They brought him in, and maybe Matt Rule doesn't want him.Maybe there's a little struggle there. He's trying to say, hey, look at this. This guy's struggling. I mean, Cam stinks, if you ask me. I'm not even going to beat her. He sucks.
He's done.
Yeah, he is terrible. They got this young kid, PJ Walker. If you're Matt Rule, what are you thinking? You're going to keep your job because of Cam Newton? No, you got to develop that young kid and get some momentum moving with your franchise. That's just not the way it's working out so far. But I think he wants to play, especially at this time of year. Like, seriously, play the kid. Get him some playing time. Get him some experience. If you're out of it, you're out of it. Who cares? What are they hanging on for? Why are you even bothering playing Cam Newton? I can't even see the guy even probably being in football next year because he says he doesn't want to be a backup.
Yeah.
So, play PJ Walker. Just get the kid some experience.
All right, I got one more thing before we go to the Saturday slate, and then we'll get into the other slate. Well, then so Saturday we can touch on the COVID, how nobody is going to be available to play. But I don't know if you guys saw this. So I love betting too. I love the DFS. I love the betting. And have you guys ever played same game parlays? G-Rizen, you're in a legal state. Probably not, JT Hayes. So in a same game parlay, when you're betting, normally you can't bet the same things from the same game. But in a single game parlay, you can, listen, I want the total. I want to take DeAndre Hopkins scoring a touchdown. I want this side. I want to come up with my own spread. And you do that. And if you can hit once every 5 times or so, you're doing pretty good, depending on how many players you're throwing in there. Well, DraftKings and FanDuel are very different. Usually, FanDuel is the one getting things wrong, and DraftKings is the one getting things right. Well, FanDuel, if you have a whole single game parlay, what happens if one of the players is inactive? Like this last week, guy had Zach Moss in there. Well, FanDuel is going to take the one player out, and they'll give you new odds, and you still win. But on DraftKings, they had it, and Zach Moss was not active. They voided the whole bet. So this guy had like 1,000 to 1. Let's say you put 100 down, and he was going to get $10,000 back. They voided the bet instead. Total bullshit. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I just remembered. So last night, this was interesting. I had Kyler Murray over 61.5 rushing yards. It was a live bet. And just before the game ends, he runs, and he clearly got 3 yards. They gave him 1 yard on the play, but DraftKings said, no, he has 62 yards. They put the money in my account. I'm happy. I'm like, okay, I know he got 61, but they got me. They got me they took it back, and I can't even complain, can I? I can't go up to him and be like, hey, guys, you took your money back, because the guy lost. It was a shitty spot, and I think that's what really cost me in the end. But I can't go to DraftKings and say, listen, you put the money in my account, put it back. It's their fault. They screwed up, but it doesn't matter. They're going to take their money back. So 2 things going on with DraftKings. The second one I understand. The first one's kind of bullshit, though. I don't like that at all.
I think if you complained about them taking that money back out, they'd probably give you a free bet for that amount just to keep you happy. Yeah, for sure. But I've been told DraftKings customer service sucks.
I disagree with you there. I'll just say this.
Much,
everybody has their own issues. I think FanDuel and William Hill are easily the 2 worst customer service in not only this business, any business in the history of the world. Like that Caesars Sportsbook. Oh my God. And you'll have your money in there, and you'll learn someday they're going to burn.
I've had nothing but good experiences, but with FanDuel, but that's just with the DFS people. Anytime I've been to live events, the DFS people with FanDuel they're terrific. Have been incredible. They're really nice. have generated relationships with them over the past, get a couple texts from guys, if I have a decent week or whatever. So yeah, I've always enjoyed, but on the other thing with that bet, them taking that out, like that should be like any kind of parlay. If you push or the game rains out in baseball, like they just wingle it down from a 6 to a 4 or 5, or just take the one out and continue the bet. Like, why would they do that? They're costing themselves money. For one, like, why wouldn't they take that bet? Why wouldn't they want to write that bet? I don't understand that, because they're losing out on all of that, all that profit that they're giving up on the rake. So I don't quite understand why they would void a bet. That's just stupid.
Okay, well, they don't want to pay the money. That's why. They're looking for any way out. You got to read the small print. And I didn't at the time with William Hill and Caesars, and that's what kind of burned me. So that was a different time, though. Let's get into this game. RPS, we got so much going on, and our code is, what is it? Saber15, SABER, Saber15. Saber Sim is our new optimizer and projections. Do either one of you really get into Saber Sim yet? I used it for the first time on Sunday. I had a good weekend. I liked it. I'm obviously not using all the tools. I'm not a 150 guy, but you guys used either one of them, because you get so much with the Saber 15. You get our site, you get the Showdown site, you get the bet side, and you get Saber for $127.50 a month. It's usually $190. JT, have you used Saber Sim?
Yeah, I started probably about 2 months ago, right as we were talking about, moving to that product. And it's different. It takes a little bit of getting used to, because I think long-term it's better, because they're looking at those lineups. You can set, first of all, what type of contest you're playing in, right? Mm-hmm. So you can do single entry, 20 max, more than 50, right? So you can tailor your lineups and upside that way, which is, set it for cash versus a tournament. And then, the modeling and the back testing is interesting, because they've come up with some plays that they'll put in my lineups. When I first started, I'm like, I don't want these guys. And then what it's doing is it's effectively simulating the games. And in a couple of these plays that they put in the lineups, they were projecting blowout, which I wasn't seeing with my human rational brain. I'm like, no. And sure enough, those plays. So I was like, all right, now I want to mix some of those guys in. So I'm still getting used to playing around with exposures. Mm-hmm. And so when it gives me one of those plays, it's not going to hit every time. But, I don't want 75% of a backup on a team that, has a low spread, just because that simulation says, this team is going to win by 15, right? So you have to play with exposures and stuff like that. So I backed off on the 150 and looking at that a little bit more and working with it. But I do like it. And what I like, I've said this on a couple of our videos here, one of the things that's important to me, that I think should be important to anyone who's spending, a significant amount of money on DFS. You want your provider, your optimizer provider, to be actively maintaining their product, to be continually improving their product. And we've had discussions. They've got, a whole Discord channel in there, and they're talking about what they're doing. They're talking about, hey, we're gonna push a new update in 2 weeks that's going to have this feature or that feature. That's something that with some of these other optimizers that are out there, they kind of make their money and then they get content. And these guys are building their product. So I think that's really good.
G-Rizen.
Yeah, I checked it out a little bit. I didn't get too far deep into it. I mean, I'm so stuck in my process. I'm old. So, once I get doing, what I do every week, I just continue to do what I've been doing. But I probably will integrate it at some point, because exactly what JT said, I've been noticing. I literally have a half dozen of the most popular optimizers in the DFS landscape. And I use them, in all different ways and try different things. And, for example, I could take a core of, let's say, JSU or BigT for a sport, and let's say basketball, and I could throw it in 6 of the different optimizers and spin it on all 6, and I get 6 different plays, 6 different lineups after the fact. And some of them are still playing guys like, for example, like Blake Griffin in basketball, because they're still going off his stinking stats from the beginning of the season, and they see he's only 3K, and they're throwing him in these plays to where JT mentioned, not the blow up spot where you get a guy that's coming off the bench who may be in. So I notice that kind of stuff. So then I take mental notes. I don't really like this site for this here because I don't trust those low price plays that they're giving me. So, there's certain sites that are good and there's certain ones that are not, but I think they all have their advantages. If you use them all enough, you can pick it up fairly quickly. If you're an educated DFS player, you kind of know and you can point it out. But you know what? I still like to look at the basics of it because you could pull up and kind of come up with, who you think the chalk plays are going to be for the day. So you can use them in many different ways. But, what JT said, some of these optimizer sites are just so far behind the 8 ball.
Sorry, Holden, just one say. That's such a great point because one of the other sites that I use, second, third week, 3 Lakers in a lineup. And that was one of the first things I noticed about SaberSim. It was never giving me more than one of, Russ or AD or LeBron. And there are some days where you just say, no, I'm going to X these guys out. But it's been good lately because it's been pushing LeBron on slates, and LeBron has entered that mode where he's embarrassed because of the team's performance, and now he's just taking over. So it's just those types of things, right? The other optos giving you the Blake Griffins and stuff like that. Really important point.
Okay, let's get into the slate here. And it's been a bloodbath these last 2 days with the COVID, okay? You've got an outbreak now.
Can I ask a question about the COVID?
What?
Just so you guys, I know you guys were talking about it earlier. Yeah. Is it true, and I'm just talking out loud, I haven't researched it, I'm just asking out loud here. After Aaron Rodgers was deemed had COVID, isn't there a stretch after that point in time where they don't test you anymore? Is that true,
no
isn't
idea.
it? I think it's a month.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that they don't – I think you might be right about not testing, but I think it's a 90-day window where he's exempt from some type of the protocols. And that's the thing with these players, right? Unfortunately for them, there's zero privacy. So you're finding out which one of these players is, vaccinated or not, which they may not want people to know. But there's 2 different sets of rules if you're vaccinated and if you're not. If you're not, you have an automatic window where you just can't be around the team. If you are, then you get like a little perk and you can test negative twice within some type of window and then be back with the team. But then they still have some of the, hey, you didn't test positive, but you were around this guy who did. So now we take you away from everyone until you test negative twice.
I think you're right on the 90 days. So my point was on the 90-day window, I think after you have had it, you have a 90-day immunity status. So now all of a sudden, my point is all these players are getting it because if they get it now in these next 2 weeks, if they're in the playoffs, they're not going to get tested at all throughout the playoffs. So now there's no risk of any of these players having to test for this COVID. I'm just thinking out loud here, like,
you got a little conspiracy theory going.
Yeah,
you
I
got
think
a little
maybe these teams are rolling out. It just seems if you don't have to test for it all of a sudden for 90 days, hey, why not say if you're the Rams, all these players have had COVID, especially if they're not vaccinated? That's
so you think they all got in the hot tub with the first guy with Henderson? They said, "Hey, Hendo, we're coming over. We're coming over."
I mean, if I have unvaccinated players like Aaron Rodgers, I want him to have at least say he's had it so he doesn't have to test for 90 days before I lose him in a playoff game. So
yeah, I'm glad
he won't have COVID, but he may have to amputate his toe, it sounds like. I mean, it sounds pretty bad.
I'm just glad that you prefaced this with you hadn't thought that through.
Well, I'm just saying now you protect your players from having to be tested during the playoff time, which you do not want them to be out. That's all I'm saying. It's a strategy, I would say. Hey,
it's definitely that, G-Rizen. It's definitely that. So anyways, apparently the Browns have been trying to get everybody positive because they've got like 8 people. The football team is now have a breakout. Now Chicago has a breakout.
The Rams
have a breakout. Like when I say breakout, we're talking 4 4 players. Maybe Washington isn't at 4 yet. Maybe they're only at 3, but my God, there's a lot of dudes that are going on this list. And all of a sudden, here we go. We've got the playoffs coming up, guys. We got the playoffs coming up. Yay. And I said this at the beginning of the year. I felt like that this problem was going to crop up again at some point in time, and here we go. Now, we can argue whether or not these players should be sitting out or if they should still play or if they have fake vax cards or if they're vaxxed. We can talk about that. But what I'm saying is we are on the precipice of having some real issues with these games being played. And we saw this last year, and they weren't in a bubble or anything, but it was a lot tighter. They were tested more. And now we're seeing the guys that are getting vaxxed like me. I got it. They said, look at the numbers. You might have been hospitalized. Okay, that's fine. I got vaxxed. Everything's fine. You could still get it. And now look at what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. Like, there's a massive outbreak. That's a minimum of 8 players that have this. And we just had an NBA game get canceled the other night, right? Yesterday.
Yep.
So
Tonight too.
And tonight, I'm a little bit concerned here going forward. Now, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. But I think that we might have a game postponed from Saturday. I don't know if they push it back to Monday or whatever. And thank God it's on Saturday. But with this breakout with the Browns guys, I think it's real now. Like, there's legit breakouts, and things are going to either get canceled or postponed big time.
Yeah, I don't have significant concerns about another complete, stop to the seasons.
No, me neither. But I think games being stopped.
Yes. Well, we saw hockey was the first to do it. Hockey started probably 3 weeks ago. I forget which team it was. One of the teams, they said, it might have been the Islanders. Hey, this team isn't playing for the next week. You're dealing with a much shorter roster there. So, you lose 4 guys off of a hockey team, and then that is a bigger impact in theory than losing 8 players from an NFL team. Depends on who those players are.
We got 10 in Washington today. 10.
Yeah. So now you're right. I think you worry about the Raider Brown game, right? Because that's one that we could see postponed. And then, Washington, the Rams play Seattle Sunday afternoon. Rams, OBJ tested positive today. Henderson was before him. I don't know if that was a positive test or he was just in the protocols. But, yeah, there's going to be impacts, and games are going to be postponed. Slates are going to be shortened. And, players are coming back from it, though. Keenan Allen just activated today for the Chargers. Mm-hmm. And you might see some midweek football once again.
I actually wouldn't mind that. That's actually kind of a nice consequence for that to happen, a nice Tuesday or Wednesday game, because I can't get enough of it. And now that college football is over, no one seems to give a shit that they're playing on Saturday. We got the little bowls coming up here pretty soon. I love NFL on Saturday. I love it, guys, and I'm excited. And I don't know how you want to handle this right now. I mean, listen, there's so many guys from the Browns on the COVID list. Do we even want to bother with this game right now? To me, the story is more as there's a ton of COVID. We got from 14 to 8 guys from the Browns now, including Austin Hooper and Jarvis Landry and Jedrick Wills. Oh my God. Like, they got massive caliber players on their team. So any thoughts on this Browns game and how you want to handle it right now? And because I don't know if there's any real reason to talk about the actual game, guys.
Yeah, I think it's tough, especially, and you also have Kareem Hunt with an injury, so he's week to week. So they'd be severely shorthanded if they play this game. So, it is the Raiders. The Raiders didn't look all that great on Sunday against the Chiefs, but I think this game is a really good shot of not playing on Saturday.
Okay.
And I think they should play it in some capacity within that week time frame and before the next week or whatever else. I mean, they're making some of these other teams play in, uncomfortable type positions. I mean, we just saw it with the Lions going here to Denver and, playing your Broncos. I mean, we had mid 40-some guys available to play. I mean, they had coaching staff that was out. So, I mean, they traveled out there to Denver with, missing, 6 or 8 guys. I think they're just going to say, hey, maybe a Saturday, but you're playing by Monday or Tuesday. We don't give a shit if you roll out Holden, JT, G-Rizen as your quarterback. I mean, they're going to have to play these games, or they're just going to tell one of these teams they're going to have to forfeit if they cannot put a team out in the field, I'm going to guess. But I do like what you guys are saying. I love that when a few times last year when them games were on like Tuesday and Wednesday, that was pretty cool. I didn't mind that at all. Or
so official stance of the show, more COVID.
How about 2 Monday games? I didn't mind when they had the 2 Monday games either.
Well, they're bringing that back week 18, right?
Yep.
Isn't that so? They
January
got that
8th,
coming too.
Yeah. But you know what? If the Browns are forced to play, it's an exciting opportunity to play Donovan Peoples-Jones, and I always get pretty geeked up about that.
I do.
Yeah,
love the guy.
Might get some Dearness Johnson. I mean, exciting times.
All right. So what about the other game then? It might be a showdown slate for all we know. I don't know. But we got Kansas City at the Chargers, and we got this freaking Chargers team, which, I mean, who the hell knows which one's going to show up? And Kansas City's been more frustrating because Patrick Mahomes just is not the same guy. This offense just isn't the same offense. And I thought I saw a little glimmer of hope last week when they started rolling him out and he could, get out of the pocket because he's been sitting in there so much. But even with that nice, juicy matchup against the Raiders, it was 20 DK points. Not too much today. All right, G-Rizen, give me a breakdown of the Chiefs and the Chargers here.
Well, that's Thursday, isn't it?
That's Thursday. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the other Saturday game's New England and the Colts.
Well, why do they have that Monday to Thursday? Hold on a second. I'm going to have to go back and
New England's playing the Colts.
We're going to have to edit this out, by the way. It's my fault. I'll go back and listen to it when it happened. What do you think? We started.
Risen's usually the guy that wants to talk about Thursday games.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But we'll let you slide this time. But
all right, let's go back. Don't worry about talking about that. We got to talk about other stuff. All right.
New England and Indy.
New England. So let me get to that. 3-2-1, Simon. New England and Indianapolis, as Charles Barkley said. What do you want to do here in this game? Offensively, it doesn't look like there's going to be too much going on here, but there are going to be guys that score. So G-Rizen, New England, and Indy.
Man, this game here, I think, is going to be a pretty good game to watch. I'm kind of excited for this one here. You got New England. They've just been quietly one of the best teams in the AFC. So, I mean, this one here is going to be another one where obviously you got Jonathan Taylor here with Indy. New England plays that really tough defense, and we know they like to run the ball. The Colts are not too bad either against the run. They're in the top handful of teams in the league against the running back. So that is going to be interesting there. I think this game does have the potential to be one of those slugfests going back and forth, but you never know with old Bill Belichick here. He may just have Mac Jones throw it 40 sometimes, especially after throwing it 3 times. So you never know what could go on there, but I am really interested in this game here. I want to see how the Colts come out and see if they're ready to step up and be, a potential playoff team here so far. I kind of doubt it, Carson Wentz and the boys, but Jonathan Taylor has just been so good. I'm just kind of curious to see what he can do against New England. I think that will be a pretty tough test for the youngster.
Yeah, and then the other side of things, to me, JT, the way that Belichick has built this thing back up after one down year because he suffered with Cam Newton, to get Mac Jones in here, to get this defense where it is, and the running game and the special teams, this reminds me of the early years with Brady. So impressive, and it just reminds you, there was a down year last year, but Bill Belichick, when it's all said and done, has every bit the shot of having more Super Bowls than Tom Brady when it's all done.
Man's a goddamn genius. I mean, there's really nothing else to say there. I'm not betting against him this time of year. The last 3 games, I think I mentioned to you guys a couple of weeks ago, I went to their Thursday night game against the Falcons in Atlanta, not because I wanted to see the Falcons, but because I was interested in watching the team play, the Patriots, watching how they handled Kyle Pitts, watching what they did defensively. Of course, they put on a clinic, 25-0 shutout, and they've been on a roll. They're now the top seed in the AFC. They would, if the season ended today, they would have the bye. And I think the way that Belichick approaches this game is he does everything he can to take away Jonathan Taylor and make Carson Wentz throw. And how he's going to do that, I don't know. I'm sure it's going to be a pretty, like G-Rizen said, I'm really interested to watch this game. I probably won't play it Showdown because, if we don't have a 2-game slate, they do have a Millie Maker up for the 2-gamer, which was intriguing to me. if that first game plays. And then on the Patriots side, yeah, I do think, to be honest, I think you see a lot of Harris and you see a lot of Stevenson and you see Mac Jones throw more than 3 times. But I think, ball control, trying to keep the ball away from Indianapolis like they did with Buffalo. And I'm interested, like you are, to see if he's successful at limiting Jonathan Taylor, because the Patriots have given up big games on the ground. He gave up something like 200 yards to the Titans a few weeks ago. But I don't think they expected the Titans to run all that much without Derrick Henry. The Colts game plan is always this season to go heavy with JT.
All right, guys, let's get into the Sunday slate then, because we got a nice big one here. And at quarterback, JT, why don't you start this one off here? We've got a lot of nice options. We don't know if Jared Allen or Josh Allen is going to be 100% here. He was in a boot, so that's one thing of concern against Carolina, but Buffalo has to win this game. Kyler is pissed off after blowing that game on Monday night, so he travels to Detroit. I mean, these top-shelf quarterbacks are looking real good. Maybe get a thought or two on Jimmy Garoppolo going up against Atlanta. Seems like he has a little bit of a floor. He's cheap this week. Again, 5.8 on DraftKings. What do you want to do here at quarterback? What are we thinking early week?
Yeah, on the surface, I started looking at this slate early this morning. On the surface, it looks like one of the ugliest weeks we've had. Just not a lot of high totals. There are some good options. You mentioned a couple of them.
December football.
What's that?
December football.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you have, Allen, if he played. Now, here's the thing. They play Carolina. Carolina hasn't looked good. Do they push Josh Allen? They do need to win. I don't think they want to go into this game with Mitchell Trubisky, regardless of, how well they say he plays in practice, and their expectation is that he'll be a starter somewhere in the league next year. So I think Allen probably plays, depending on his, status, how healthy he is. You may see a different kind of game plan. You may see them run a bit more against Carolina. I think Kyler's in a great spot against Detroit. His rushing alone, he should rush for 100 yards this week. And then Tua gets the Jets. It's the second divisional game, but my goodness, the Jets have nothing to really offer here. Tua's actually looked good. You've got some playmakers on that team that have been playing well. So those are the 3 guys that I have written down at quarterback, unless you want to go way, way low. Davis Mills actually had a good game last week in that loss against Seattle. He got to over 20 DK points. He takes on a Jacksonville team that's an absolute mess, all the things going on there. That's really, you mentioned Garoppolo. One of the things I said last week, I said, yeah, you always play the quarterback against the Falcons, I guess, unless it's Cam Newton and PJ Walker. But yeah, the question there is Elijah Mitchell back? If Elijah Mitchell is back, it becomes interesting because, do you pair? Kittle's all the way up to 7.5 now. You got Debo back, Ayuk. That team's fully healthy. It doesn't sound like a good time for my Falcons.
No, it doesn't. But they're in the playoff hunt, which is the most shocking thing in the history of the world. I know every team back in the final couple of spots sucks. They're all 6 and 7. But the fact that they're one of those 6 and 7 teams is mind-boggling to me.
And think about it. Calvin Ridley played 3 games and pretty ineffectively in those 3 games. Teams have schemed to take away Kyle Pitts. They're in the playoff hunt because of my guy Cordy Patterson.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. If not for Tom Brady, he'd be an MVP candidate, right?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm going. But for all the people here, start of the season, so down on Arthur Smith, and I was one of them. I was like, man, I really expected. And then you kind of had to take a step back and say, wow, he's got Matt Ryan, who's not very mobile at this point in his career, and really very few weapons once Ridley was off. It's kind of amazing that they're in this spot, right? Because a lot of people expected that they were going to lose to Carolina last week. And that game wasn't close from start to finish.
G-Rizen, now I have my second break I need to take. It's a pee break. I know that you like to talk, though. And I feel confident by the time I get back, you will still be bloviating about a wonderful position. Can you handle it, G-Rizen?
I think we can handle it, but don't drop your phone in the toilet.
I won't do that again. And then the other thing is now you're getting cocky because you're with the Woodward Sports Network, and now you're a great host. So, have a good time with that.
Objects may seem larger than they appear. That's what So, but quarterback for me, though, this week, I think Kyler Murray is obviously in the great spot. I mean, the Lions are terrible. I don't see them putting up much of a fight there. I just worry about the blowout factor, how much they're going to – I mean, his strength is obviously running around to where you can get those running back points. And, this week against the Lions, I don't know how necessary that's going to be. We've seen how they just been gashed against the run here, especially with what Denver did to them. So if Edmonds gets back in there, I think Murray is a huge risk where I think they're just going to end up giving it to Connor and to Edmonds quite a bit. But JT, I really like what you're saying about Tua. Let's think about Miami. They're not going to have any running backs. So, I mean, are they just going to want to throw the ball quite a bit? I think we saw that last week with the Lions when they were struggling without running backs. It dawned on me like an hour before the game, I thought, I need to play one of these cheap Lion running backs or wide receivers because they're going to have to throw the ball literally 40 some times because they don't have any running backs, and they're going to probably be in a position where they're going to be losing. And maybe Miami's not losing necessarily to the Jets, who may get Michael Carter back, which may help them. They may get more back as well. But if that's the case, then, I think Tua is in a pretty good spot. I don't know if they have an answer for Waddle over there with the Jets. So, he's only 5,700, so I don't mind that at all. So, Stafford's another interesting play this week against Seattle here. I think Stafford may have a pretty decent game. So we'll see what happens with that Rams and, all the COVID issues. But, that's pretty much where I would land at quarterback. And look who is
made it back in time. I'm so proud of myself. All right, guys, let's get into the
over
next.
Under on how many dribble spots he's got on the front of his pants.
None.
Say, JT?
Oh, you're right. There's two.
One note on the Cardinals. I expect Edmonds back. James Conner got hurt on the last play of that game last night. So it's an interesting spot because there's a pretty significant difference in price between Conner and Edmonds. If Conner somehow misses, Chase is sitting there at 5-1.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you, if they are both in, is that another situation possibly this week where we had last week with Denver where you played both running backs against that terrible Lions rush defense? I think Arizona would be fine running Edmonds and Conner 15-plus times each.
Maybe. Cliff Kingsbury obviously trusts Kyler a lot more than Fangio trusts Teddy Bridgewater. So I do think that he could throw some, but I don't know. I think Chase Edmonds, if Conner is in or out, Chase Edmonds at 5,100 against that defense is very, very interesting.
So elsewhere at running back, it's ugly. It really is. The top priced running back on DK this week is Najee Harris at 7.8. Nobody in the 8K range. Zeke is the second highest price at 7.3. Mixon, who's coming off a quiet game, taking on a tough Denver team, but you can run on Denver, so that might not be the worst thing. Aaron Jones back at it again. I'm glad you brought up Connor. I think he needs an MRI, and I think Hopkins is hurt again too, so there's some issues there. Javonte is 6-1. Antonio Gibson coming off a disappointing game, right? I think he has a terrific floor this week against Philadelphia. So you just kind of go up and down this. And what about Sony Michel against Seattle? Does James Robinson get a shot against Houston at 1%? You tell me, what do you want to go up and down here, G-Rizen? Start at the running back position.
Yeah, you're right. Running back is pretty weak this week. Man, some slim pickings. But, Mixon, we'll have to see how he, I know he was sick here the last week. I think that's interesting. Cordell Patterson, like JT's boy. That guy gets, a ton of work. He's basically the main part of their offense. So I feel like you talk about a floor. I think he's a guy that has a really good floor. And then I do like the Gibson call against Philly. Philadelphia is in the bottom third of the league against a running back. He's only 6K. And especially if McKissick's going to be out, I'm not quite sure yet if he'll be back. But even if he is back, we've already seen Gibson is pretty much getting the most of those carries. So I don't mind that call at all. I think that's really interesting. And then, it's too bad this Tennessee, running game here. We couldn't just hone one in on one guy and just have one guy stand out, because I think they'd be in a pretty good spot against Pittsburgh this week. But you can't just you can't guess. And then, a guy that's not on here either is what about a guy like Rashad Penny? He just had a pretty big game this last week too. Is a pretty low owned play that some guys seem to benefit from. Everywhere on the top of these tournaments, it seemed like Rashad Penny and his 26 points was in that lineup.
He's 5-4 on DraftKings this week and 6-1 on FanDuel. So there's good running backs in that 6K range on DK, and there's just not high price guys. JT Hayes, not a lot of them. None of them.
Yeah. G-Rizen, you mentioned the Miami guys. Are they definitely out? Because I saw something that Gaskin might be back.
I think they got to pass. I'm not sure about the statuses. I think one of them has to sit out 10 days, and I thought I read the other two had to have 2 negative tests in 2 days before they're allowed to play. Okay. So we'll see what happens there. I'm sure we'll know on Saturday.
What's interesting about him? He's got 15 touches in every game that he's played over his last 6 games. He's got 15 touches.
Gaskin will destroy the Jets if he plays.
Yeah, I know.
If he doesn't play, I think I just lock Tua. If he's got no running backs, that's interesting. But I would prefer Gaskins. I think he'd be a great play. Henderson might be back. Darrell Henderson, great matchup against Seattle. 5'9" there. Holden, I think you mentioned Michael Carter. He'll get all those dump offs from Zach Wilson, which it seems, unfortunately, that's really the only thing he can do. That's his only play there. So 4-7 for him. Is it true DeAndre Swift might be back as well?
I have not heard about DeAndre Swift coming back. I'll look that up now, but no.
They're talking about, they're saying they're leaning here in Detroit that he's probably going to be out.
Wow.
Okay.
Here's what it is.
There's a chance he could play.
Here's Dave Burkett, one of their beat writers. There's a chance Swift and Hawkinson could both be on the field for the Lions. So it's up in the air now. Let's say he plays. What do you want to do with him, JT?
You know what? If he's going to get all that garbage passing game run, but outside of that, you mentioned Mixon, 7-2. He is a little bit banged up. Looked okay, but and then you go right back to those Denver guys. I think you could run on Cincinnati. So San Francisco just didn't because Mitchell was out, and I don't think they have any faith in the other 2 guys. Other than that, Miles Sanders, I don't know. It's kind of rough. Yeah, it is. It's kind of rough. The Jacksonville you brought up, right? So Jacksonville's a mess. I was looking earlier. I cannot figure the game plan against the Titans because James Robinson had 5 or 6 rushes. Carlos Hyde had 2 or 3 rushes. They get a matchup that we just saw the invincible Rashad Penny destroy.
Yeah.
There's every reason to believe if Robinson or even if Hyde got work there, they would have success, but I have no idea what this team's going to do.
Okay. Let's move on to our next one, our next wonderful position. Wide receiver. Cooper Kupp, Devon. This is the fun part, though. This week we get to spend up at wide receiver if we want to. Kupp, 9K. Adams, 8.9. Debo, 8.2. If you trust that he's going to be healthy. Deontay Johnson should get peppered, 7.5. Man, G-Rizen, can you see yourself rostering both Kupp and Adams this week in the same lineup?
Yeah, there's some value. Obviously, we've seen that running back isn't too expensive. I'm sure you could be able to jam it in if you went pretty cheap at tight end, but we'll get to that too, tight end. It's either you spend up or you spend down, but, Cooper Kupp, damn, how many weeks are we going to watch Stafford throw it to him 12, 15 times? It's unreal. So I do like Kupp. Deontay Johnson's another one. Tennessee's dead last against a wide receiver. And we know Ben locks in on guys. He's been locking in on Deontay Johnson. I think he's got a lot of upside. He's pretty much all that Pittsburgh's been, has at this point in time. But it's going to be interesting to see with these Rams, though. You mentioned Kupp. I mean, how Kupp will be really high owned if OBJ can't go, or you end up missing one of these other guys, because now you're going to look at some of these other targets and you're just going to assume, especially without Higbee, if Higbee's out. So, now you're going to be looking at, 10, 12 targets that are going to go around. To me, I mean, he's going to look at his boy Kupp. So I think Kupp is a guy you almost got to play. But Deontay Johnson, though, for me is a guy that I've been leaning on. He's been, doing really well for me. And then we already mentioned Jalen Waddle. If we don't have any of them running backs there for Miami, I think Waddle is going to be the guy Tua looks to the most. So we could be in a spot here where Waddle's getting a dozen or so, targets. So I think that's definitely interesting. And then, we'll see with that Seattle game. I think that game has the potential to be a shootout. And man, Lockett's just been a guy that I think you can use every week. Lockett, I was upset I didn't use him last week. I saw that comment. I thought, oh man, it's a good spot for Lockett. I didn't have the guts to pull the trigger. Still kind of worrying about how bad Wilson's been. But Lockett's he's just been phenomenal lately. And then how can you ignore Deebo Samuel against Atlanta? I mean, that's another guy. I mean, Samuel, he scores every stinking week. They find a way to get him the ball. And I think that's, really important for, if you're going to roster receiver, I mean, this guy's getting rushing touches. So I think, that's a pretty good spot for Deebo as well.
Yeah. And this, it is a good spot for Deebo as well. You just got to trust that the groin is healthy enough. Because listen, he had that big run last week, but they didn't feature him very much, JT Hayes. What is your take on Deebo right now? And what do you want to do with Adams and Kupp? And do you see yourself with a double spend up there at wide receiver at the top?
I mean, you could. I mean, if you end up playing Tua, Devontae Parker's questionable, right? You've got his tight end at 5K flat against the Jets. So you do a double stack there with Tua, and you could pretty much, there's no high spends at running back. You can pretty much do whatever you want. I played Deebo the game before. The game he got injured, I played him, and he got all his work as a runner. He didn't have a single catch. He had 2 touchdowns and 80-something yards rushing. 8,200 is a lot to pay for that, especially if Elijah Mitchell is back. That's the concern with San Francisco. If all these guys are healthy and back, I don't know what Shanahan's going to do, right? I'm figuring it's going to be heavy run, but they've been clicking, and they're just all priced up now. So not sure about that. Kupp 9.0. Nobody covers this guy. Nobody can cover this guy, I guess. I mean, it's the craziest thing. Usually in the NFL, we see coaches will watch tape and decide, oh, I really have to not let this guy beat me, right? And nobody seems to do that with Cooper Kupp. Just almost every single week, 20 or more fantasy points, usually 30 plus. So Stefan Diggs is cheap in this matchup, depending on Allen, 7,700 against Carolina. You mentioned Deontay. That Dallas Giants game, it just screams ugly. I hate games in that stadium. They just never seem to be heavy volume. And then Waddle, right? We talked about Waddle. Jerry Jeudy is still 5'4", but they still don't want to really throw the ball. So you can, though, against the Bengals. They gave up a lot of yards to both the Chargers 2 weeks ago and then the 49ers this week. So then it becomes, after that, sort of a guessing game, some of these guys.
All right, guys, tight end. This will be the last one. Did a nice long show today. It's so nice. What do we got here, tight end today? Do we want to – well, George Kittle's just been unconscious, and he's got this matchup against Atlanta. Like, if you're going top shelf, JT, how do you not just – Kittle too, man. If we're not paying up at running back, let's go pay up at wide receiver and tight end early in the week, huh?
Yeah, I mean, 2, I think, 40-point games in a row for George Kittle. And that was with Deebo Samuel back. They didn't have the running game, so that's something to watch in San Francisco, because if they have the running game, I don't know that Kittle is going to get to where you need him to get to at 7.5. Not like not like I'm concerned about the Falcons defensively or anything like that, but it's just a matter of them spreading the ball out. Mike Gesicki in the game against the Jets, 5K flat. Uzoma against the Broncos, 3-1. He hasn't gotten quite the targets lately with all the guys healthy, so that's a bit of a risk. But Ricky Seals-Jones, 3-4. He is the tight end against Philadelphia. Philadelphia has been beaten badly by tight ends all season long. And then Zach Ertz, who seems like a forgotten guy here, but Ertz, especially depending on that situation of whether or not Connor is in or out, Ertz at 5-4 against the Lions seems like a pretty safe floor there with him at least.
All right, what do you got at tight end this week, G-Rizen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Kittle, as you mentioned, he'd be the fifth highest priced wide receiver if he was right there. I believe he'd be tied with Deontay Johnson. So, I mean, yeah, like JT said, I think that a lot has to do with Mitchell, who's in there and not. But, another thing, depending on injuries and all this COVID stuff, is Gesicki with Tua. I like Gesicki too. If you went with Tua, you could go with Waddle and Gesicki. I think you'd have a pretty decent pairing there. But I think Dawson Knox is interesting at 5-1. Goddard's pretty interesting too against Washington at 5-3 on DK. But, for me, Zach Ertz, I mean, the Lions always seem to give up a touchdown to tight end. So I think that's, an interesting spot. And Seattle's pretty bad against the tight ends too. So if Higbee does come back, I think I would like Tyler Higbee as well against Seattle. I think there could be some points scored in that Rams and Seattle game. So I think with Higbee, if he's in there, especially if OBJ's out, like we mentioned, there may be some targets going around. So have to keep my ear to the ground to see if Higbee's going to be back, but I don't mind him at all. But
he's off the COVID list. He just came off today. He's off
okay,
the COVID
perfect.
list.
So then I'd like Higbee. So I think he'd be a decent play.
Okay.
Especially if they're shorthanded.
JT Hayes, wonderful to see you. G-Rizen, wonderful to see you. I don't know what's so funny, JT Hayes.
It's just always good to spend time with you. It's something I look forward to.
What a disaster.
I'm honestly, it's going to be a long week waiting until we get to see Uncle T again.
It is. G-Rizen.
We missed Uncle T. I like giving him shit, and he wasn't here, so we didn't have that person to have some fun with and joke with, and the sad thing is we didn't get to hear about his birthday this week. It's one of the only times on the Wishbone this year we didn't hear about his birthday.
39 weeks until Uncle T's birthday.
JT, why did you type IP now in the chat? Did you have to pee? Did you go in your seat with a bottle?
Were you not paying attention?
No.
I disappeared for like 2 minutes. And as soon as I entered the room, I was off camera and I heard you saying my name. And I was like, what is this guy like? Does he have eyes in the back of his head? And he sees me coming. But now I realize you were just not paying attention like usual.
It's not paying attention. I don't watch you guys. I don't look at you guys during the show most of the time.
Okay. All right.
Except at the beginning and the end.
All right. That's fine.
It's just
there you go.
I saw that, G-Rizen.
Well,
your middle finger. All right, Simon, get us out of here.